Let's talk briefly about the kinds of literature we'll be focusing on in this unit. So, what you're reading today, the Faith and Conflict selections, are context. They give you a sense of the kind of religious writings where Protestants and Catholics were going back and forth with one another. The main things we'll be reading, and you get a sense of this in Robert Southwell's poem that ends the Faith and Conflict unit, are lyric poetry and secular theater, two forms that we've not really looked at up to this point. I want to emphasize how these two forms are related to the context I just talked about. Lyric poetry claims to be the private expression of an individual's feelings. We've not seen anything like this. This kind of lyric poetry was not prominent during the medieval period. It's more prominent in a period that emphasizes the individual over the community, and in particular, offers a sort of performance of the self. When you think to yourself, you don't end up writing 14-line sonnets. So there's a sense that whatever your real feelings are, they're being filtered through a kind of poetic form. And because these poems were often written by people who were around court, we can see the kind of performance of individuality and individual sort of desire. A lot of these poems are about love. That will be a hallmark of this period. So we'll read Sir Philip Sidney and Thomas Wyatt and Edmund Spenser, and then in a more spiritual vein, we'll look at John Donne and George Herbert, people who are thinking about their spirituality and their love relationships in this more private way, individual way. And finally, secular theater. The theater of the medieval period was by and large religious, and it functioned under the church. This is not true during the Renaissance. Because politics became a kind of performance, much more so in the Renaissance than it was in the Middle Ages, where power was less centralized and more diffuse. Theater became very popular, especially in London, where there was a huge population influx, and this was basically the movies of the late 16th, early 17th century. Over 1 million people attended a play during this period, and William Shakespeare is by far the most famous of these playwrights. And the thing we're going to be discussing here is the way in which plays emphasize performance, how you have to perform for a specific audience and generally show externally what what your inward character is like. One of the reasons Protestants didn't like Catholicism is that they thought it was too showy. The emphasis on works in addition to faith to them meant that you could fake your Christianity, that you could be a hypocrite. And so one of the things that theater does, it's obvious why Protestants were skeptical of religious theater. One of the things that theater does is emphasize the role performance plays in our everyday lives. So we'll want to look at that, especially through a religious viewpoint.